This video is brought to you by Mack Weldon Clothing. They don't make capes, but that's a good thing. Capes are dumb. Solo, a Star Wars story, may not be the Star Wars story we've all wanted, but it's the Star Wars story we now have. And being a prequel set within the Star Wars universe, of course there's going to be nods to the other films in the series, expansion and reference to Star Wars lore, some surprises in terms of returning characters, new and old locations, links to the Legends universe, more details on the Millennium Falcon, and many or much more things. Here's the list of categories I'll be touching on in this video. The time codes for each are in the description if you want to jump around a bit. And spoilers for Star Wars A Solo Story, if you haven't seen it, or you fell asleep during it and missed some parts. If that did happen, don't feel bad. You work hard, I bet. Right, movies. These are all the movie references I spotted. I've broken them up into each entry for ease of understanding, but more accurately, ease of editing. The Han Solo dice show up again, popularized in The Last Jedi, but also appearing in a Force Awakens deleted scene, as well as A New Hope, all the way back in 1977. When caught trying to escape his captors, at the beginning of the film, Han says he's on his way to see Lady Proxima, similar to what he says to Greedo.
As a matter of fact, I was just going to see your boss.
Along with that, we get origins of Han Solo's blaster, him sporting a furry coat, similar to the original stand-in for Jabba the Hutt, as well as this shot, which looks like it's ripped right from that moment. Rio Durant mentions that when he retires, which essentially seals his fate, bless his little monkey heart, he wants to open a cantina where it's warm, but not too warm, possibly a nod to the Mos Eisley Cantina, a bar where they also don't serve droids, just like where Han meets Lando. Beckett's also like, you don't know what it's like to tend bar. I mean, live with a price on your head, Han. But then later, Han does know what that's like, in a big way. Enfys Nest uses a tracking beacon to follow the Millennium Falcon, like how the Empire does to find the Rebel base on Yavin 4. And Holo Chess is back. Chewbacca's probably never seen this before. He's probably only played Dejarik with actual physical pieces. Chewbacca also pretends to be a prisoner to infiltrate a facility again. And we finally see him tear someone's arm off, like we've always been promised, but never shown. That's if you don't count this deleted scene from The Force Awakens. L3 removes a restraining bolt from a droid, and Han, instead of saying the classic Star Wars line about having a bad feeling about this, flips the bloody script by saying he's got a good feeling instead. Talk about subverting expectations. We finally see the famous 12 parsec Kessel Run, if you round down, that was first mentioned 4 decades ago. And after years of speculation, what a 12 parsec Kessel Run looks like is when you fly into a space cloud, and then you avoid some really big rocks, and then you accidentally wake up a giant squid, and then trick it into being sucked into a big swirly red hole, and then you fly away. Just as I predicted. Beckett talks of a big shot gangster putting together a crew on Tatooine, in reference to Jabba the Hutt, and we now know that Han really does shoot first, or at least he did this time, though I assume later he changes his mind about doing this and decides that he's only going to shoot at the same time as someone else, because that is the version that is still canon. And finally, from A New Hope, it turns out the person that initially helps fund the Rebel Alliance, but don't call him a hero, is Han Solo. He's just more than happy to hand over hundreds of millions of credits for very little benefit, and also aid in taking down a slave and drug peddling crime boss. But again, don't call him a hero. Alright, Empire Strikes Back. We now know that within the Star Wars universe, the Imperial theme introduced in that film is also the official, in-canon Imperial theme song, albeit a little bit more upbeat when we hear it at the recruitment station. Han flips both the speeder and the Falcon sideways to escape. Also again, he says, "Watch this," before completely botching something.
Watch this.
Rio Durant speaks of a Minoc roast on Ardinia, his home planet. Dryden Voss also has a Minoc in a jar in his quarters. Is that a weird thing to collect? Aren't they just like winged rats? One of the reasons the Falcon is such a great ship is because it has the best navigational database in the galaxy, courtesy of L3. Her having her mind uploaded to the ship, trapped forever, is probably why C-3PO was all, "Hey Han Solo, your ship's real weird and I don't like it."
I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it has the most peculiar dialect.
After meeting Han for the first time, Lando calls him Han.
Can I ask you a question, Captain Calrissian?
Anything, Han? That's Han, but that's okay.
He seems to be one of the few characters who calls him this.
Just to save hat.
Lando's split with Beckett goes from his initial 50% request down to 25 and then 20. Almost as if
This deal is getting worse all the time.
Yes, very good, Lando. Thank you for your input. We see Kira wear one of Lando's capes in his cape room. Where's a cape room, though? It's ridiculous. Anyway, that cape seems to be very similar to the one he wears on Cloud City, although I didn't see the yellow lining. Han pressures a woman into kissing him on the Falcon. Again, not in the circuitry bay, but in the cape room. I mean, all I'm saying is, at least hang up the shirts and the capes. But also, again, that kiss is interrupted. Lando mentions that he hates mining colonies, even though he ends up running one. And in fact, he has a model of Cloud City on his ship. The asteroid chase music is again employed during the Kessel run. On Kessel, the Pike Syndicate use a gun turret to attempt to stop the Falcon. We also see the ship's high beams. We also know the reason Lando hates Han Solo is because he wrecked his ship and then stole his ship. Though if we get another Han Solo movie or something in this time period, maybe we'll get another reason for why Lando hates him. Also, the lines, "I hate you, I know," are employed, subverting expectations again in a big way from what Leia said to him. I don't have the footage for that, but I've recreated it here using complicated and time-costly editing techniques.
I
know.
Return of the Jedi is not without its references.
Because he's holding a thermal detonator.
Han threatens easily sunburnt gangster worm with a fake one. Him being thrown in the pit with Chewie is very reminiscent of Luke being thrown down with the Rancor, and also when Han is reunited with Chewie in his cell. Lando's guard disguise is worn by Beckett. In Legends, it belongs to Tamtal Screege, but I thought I heard the words drool disguise this time around. Also during the Kessel run, the Falcon's dish gets pulled off the roof, meaning it's had at least 3 dishes, like a full course meal. The sequel trilogy gets a few nods. The orphans working for Sunburnto Wormo are working for portions, the way Rey does. The insult, mangy Kashyyyki and Moof Milker, is thrown at Chewie.
Some moof milker put a compressor on the ignition line.
The Falcon's gun turret goes down, like it does in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And speaking of The Last Jedi, when Beckett betrays Dryden Voss, he's told, "This is going to be your last mistake," to which he replies, "Maybe," just like DJ says to Finn. Plus, we also see stun devices employed. The prequels also get a bit of play. Lando mentions not wanting to neurowash L3, which is what happens to C-3PO at the end of Revenge of the Sith, because he knows a bunch of stuff which you'll probably end up telling everyone. Anakin Skywalker had a baby, except it was 2 babies. One lives in the desert and one lives with Jimmy Smits. Bet that's what he'd bloody do. I think Kira mentioned something about being from the Trade Federation on Kessel, though I may have misheard that. And we get a big old eye right near the Maw, just like the big old eye we saw in The Phantom Menace. Other movies don't escape being drawn into Star Wars canon, like some kind of giant space squid getting the skin torn from its head and then getting pulled into a big swirling red hole. The street racing element at the beginning of the film seemed a bit American Graffiti to me, which was directed by George Lucas and featured both Ron Howard, director of Solo, and Harrison Ford, who was Solo, but now he's out because he's old and ugly. Just kidding, he looks amazing. However, Ron Howard apparently took references from his own films, including Grand Theft Auto. That's right, Ron Howard has directed every single Grand Theft Auto game. Just joking. Ignore that great joke. Cease your laughter if that's possible. He directed a movie by that name in 1977. He also took influence from Bullet and the work of Paul Newman, because he's a very cool guy, plus his more recent film, Rush, which is great, by the way. I don't think it did very well, but everyone, you should watch Rush. Dryden Voss is in possession of the gold idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is very prominently displayed, and it's also been reported by some that the Sankara stones and the Holy Grail are also present. Now, considering at least one of these is in this film, that adds fuel to the theory that Star Wars and Indiana Jones exist in the same universe. It's all connected. It's all the same thing. And I also don't know why Harrison Ford hates playing Han Solo more than he hates Indiana Jones. They're pretty much the same person, except one wears a hat. Han refers to Needles as the best street racer on Corellia. There is a character called Needles from Old Republic lore, but it could be a nod to Needles from Back to the Future 2 and 3. And the Corellian Hounds are a homage to the Death Dogs from Ron Howard's Willow. In terms of Star Wars lore outside of the films, there's mention of the 5 syndicates. I think this includes Death Watch, Black Sun, the Pike Syndicate, the Hutt Clan, and the Knight Brothers, all possibly under Darth Maul's The Shadow Collective, which we'll get back to in a bit. Wookiees being enslaved and taken off Kashyyyk began shortly after Revenge of the Sith, and we see them being put to work on Kessel during Star Wars Rebels. The Imperial recruitment banners on Corellia could have very well been designed by Iden Versio's mother, as we know that was her job. Sabak is introduced into the films, which has been officially canon for a while now. Also, what looks a lot like a holocron is in Dryden Voss's chamber, the contents of which is not made clear, but it really could be anything. But I bet it's something great, or just like salacious nude pictures of salacious crumb. You know, which is also great. Okay, let's talk about droids and creatures in the Empire and stuff. One of those bug-headed RA-7 protocol droids is smashed in the speeder chase at the beginning, whilst behind that droid is an Imperial naval trooper in a booth. There's also a few variations on stormtroopers we see, other than regular stormtroopers, including desert stormtroopers, mud troopers, ranger troopers, and Imperial patrol troopers. We see a bunch of different astromech droids, including a red R2 unit, Viper drones, hoping to stop the train from being train heisted, plus Twi'leks, one of those flat-headed androids that were going to be used in Rogue One, but they weren't, and now Dryden Voss has one. I'd imagine it's great for resting your drink on. This guy's name is Argus Six Eyes Panox, which is a reference to a creature from Greek myth. We also get a Greedo. And look, they're really called Rhodians, but why would I call them that when I can say that they're all Greedos? Plus, they all look the same. Who cares? I mean, look at this. After Han shoots Greedo, there's just another one in the same clothes just walking around outside. What is that? What's happening? Also, one of the Cloud Riders appears to be Two Tubes, who ends up joining Saw Gerrera's partisans in Rogue One. Hey, it's ad time! Gotta pay the bills! I love having money to pay bills. I mean, who doesn't? And what better way to pay bills than talking about Mack Weldon? Mack Weldon are a quality clothing company that have sweet looking hoodies, underwear, undershirts, t-shirts, polos, socks, sweats, which are all famously antimicrobial, which basically means you can wear them all day and they smell great, real fresh. They also fit really well. They are absolutely my favorite t-shirt. So if you like clothing that's not terrible and lasts for ages because it's made really well, visit mackweldon.com and use the offer code Mr. Sunday Movies, or one word, for 20% off your purchase. All of that is linked below. There's also a bunch of new and returning vehicles. The stolen speeder at the start is an M68. Above the Corellia shipyards, we see Imperial Star Destroyers being built, along with a TIE Fighter factory, and we get a new TIE Fighter version in the TIE RB. Got a big old gun on it. We also see that the Imperials transport their ground assault vehicles with the AT Hauler. We see AT-STs plus AT-DTs and the foot of an AT-AT, and we also hear one stomping around. Han Solo says he's been boosting AV-21s since he was 10, plus swoop bikes, which are like a heavier, more powerful speeder bike, are used by the Cloud Riders. The VCX 100s are mentioned, which is the type of ship the Ghost is from Rebels, and it looks as if there was a pod racing engine in the impound lot that was holding the Falcon. But speaking of the Falcon, it's mentioned that Han's father wanted to be a pilot but worked in a shipping yard instead on various YT-1300s. This movie also justifies how the Falcon looks different from when we saw it in Revenge of the Sith, where it looks more like the New Hope version, because Lando modified it. We also get the Falcon breakdown sound when it's getting pulled into the maw, and one of the many things that Lando has kitted the ship out with includes a Socorro jewelry safe, which is from an Outer Rim planet, and Smuggler's Haven. There are also elements of the new design that are borrowed directly from the original Ralph McQuarrie art. There's also a bunch of stuff from Star Wars Legends that makes it in. Borrowed, if you will, from the work of others that was thrown in the bin and then retrieved from said bin. This includes how Han won the Falcon from Lando in the Han Solo trilogy, but that time it was in like an extended Sabacc tournament. It's a great series of books. You should read them. Han's origins is also a bit similar in that he's an orphan on Corellia, though originally his family is from like a rich bloodline, but that doesn't appear to be the case anymore. He also grew up mostly on the streets, working again for a gangster, though he was named Garrus Strike, who bears a few similarities to Beckett. He was also kicked out of the academy for freeing Wookiee slaves and didn't leave on his own accord. Plus he speaks Wookiee because he was practically raised by one. The cook of the Trader's Luck was a Wookiee and worked for Shrike. His love interest was that of Briar Tharyn, whom also betrayed him, not to join a man who looks like literally the devil, but to aid the Rebel Alliance. The Cloud Riders were a gang first introduced in the Marvel Star Wars comics. Tag and Bink are apparently in this film, who also had a comic series, but I didn't see him. Kira knows Teras Kasai, a form of martial arts that was introduced in Shadows of the Empire, and also a big part of what many people consider to be the worst Star Wars game ever. But believe me, there are worse ones. Don't even get me bloody started on 1997 Star Wars Monopoly, that cheating pile of broken horse shit. There were also 2 early trilogies of books for both Han and Lando in the early days of Star Wars canon. There's a bunch of references to those, such as when Lando is chronicling his stories and he mentions Sharu from Mind Harp of Sharu. and we also see the crystal skull from Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. There's also a number of locations mentioned or visited in the film. Corellia we talked about. Vandor 1 makes its first canonical appearance. Mimbin we've also seen before non-canonically in Splinter of the Mind's Eye. The Volton Scarif seen in Rogue One is brought up, and we get mention of the Black Spire, a location that sold various droid parts first seen in the Star Wars trading cards. Felucia comes up, seen in Revenge of the Sith, and Darth Maul mentions that he's on Dathomir, a site of many ancient and spooky Force-related things. It's been in the Clone Wars and Rebels as well, which Darth Maul revisits. It's a whole thing. In fact, though, let's talk about Darth Maul. It's about dang time, I feel. So yeah, if you weren't aware, he did survive being cut in half. We already knew this. That's been confirmed before. But basically, he was fueled to kick on by the pure hatred of Obi-Wan Kenobi. A person, it appears, has that effect on people. So yeah, if you want to be horribly maimed and live, he's the guy to maim you. So Maul went mad and got robot spider legs and then regular robot legs, which we could see under his cloak. And he went back to the Emperor and he was all, hey, I still want to train with you. But the Emperor's all, nah mate, you're embarrassing yourself. Besides, I have a new apprentice. This 90-year-old man. He then runs a Mandalorian army, then forms a crime syndicate. That all goes pear-shaped, and we don't see him again until a few years before A New Hope. But it looks as if all that crime he was doing, it didn't stop. In fact, it appears to be going super well for him. Also, his new lightsaber is the same one we see him with in Rebels. And here's the thing. You might be like, great, Darth Maul's back. Which sure, you know, that's great, I guess. But it'd be even more great if we didn't know that he's dead now. So if we do see him again, don't expect Han Solo to shoot him in the side of the head or something along those lines. And, interesting fact, he's played again by Ray Park, but this time dubbed by Sam Witwer, who voices the animated version and played Starkiller in the Force Unleashed video games. How fun. Aura Singh is mentioned. Dryden Voss apparently pushed her to her death. She's in The Phantom Menace and also Clone Wars. Bosk gets name dropped. Good on him. But Bosk, please put on some shoes for fuck's sake. You're such a weirdy lizard-faced creep. And fun fact, Jon Favreau, who's working on the new Star Wars live-action TV series, voiced Rio Durant. Warwick Davis cameos again. That's become somewhat of a tradition, as he's playing one of the Cloud Riders. He could actually be the same guy he played in The Phantom Menace. I mean, that was 20 years ago, so you know the timeline, you could roughly make it work. Anthony Daniels doesn't show up as C-3PO, but he does play one of the human slaves, helping Chewie and the other Wookiees escape on Kessel. Clint Howard, Ron Howard's brother, is running Robot Wars, and George Lucas, creator of Star Wars, made a tiny directorial suggestion that made it into the film in Lando's Cape Room.
The first day that I was shooting, and it was a two-person scene. It was between Emilia Clarke, Kira, and Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo. And in it, she's sort of holding this one of Lando Calrissian's cloaks. And Han takes it, and, you know, the direction was to just, he hangs it up. He takes it from her and kind of hangs it up on the wall. And George at one point said, Han wouldn't hang it up. He wouldn't bother. He'd just throw it over his shoulder.
Man, I wish I had a cape room. Mostly so I could just remove all the capes and put something useful in there, like Mack Weldon t-shirts. You know what? If you're going to sell out, don't half-ass it. That's what I say. All right. That's a lot of Easter eggs and references by any standards. Do you have any favorites? Or better yet, if I've missed any, which I'm sure I have, please feel free to leave it below. Also, I don't know what YouTube is doing right now with the subscription feed and everything else, but if you could leave a like, that would be super helpful. Probably. And if you haven't, you can subscribe and bell icon, because there's videos here every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, including a bunch of upcoming stuff for Solo, plus a recent episode of Caravan of Garbage, which covers a comic in which Han Solo goes blind forever. Also, this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, where we talk movies and comics and TV shows, we'll be getting right into Solo. The good, the bland, all of it. I have many things to say and many questions regarding this film, which we'll be getting into. But you can find all that linked below or at planetbroadcasting.com, a great site with lots of great things. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Take care.